And what President Kennedy said was, we choose to go to the moon and do other things. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
The cost of failure is much higher than the cost of scrubbing. We have an obligation to get this right.
This is a whole new vehicle, a whole new technology, a whole new purpose of going back to the moon in preparation to go to Mars. And yes, it's hard.
What an exciting day at the Kennedy Space Center. You can see the Orion spaceship coming out of the ONC building where we've been assembling it for several years. As big a step as this is for us today in rolling out and starting the journey of Artemis 1 to the moon and beyond, we're really excited for this test program to get this vehicle flowing and to begin the next steps, which are to send humans back to the moon.
The twin sister of Apollo, Artemis is the name given to the program that will return humanity to the moon. And named after one of the largest constellations in the sky, Orion is the spacecraft destined to get us there. Through Artemis missions, NASA will land the first woman and the first person of color on the lunar surface. And these missions will allow us to explore more of the moon than ever before, paving the way for long-term presence in lunar orbit. But before Orion can travel to our nearest celestial body, it must first make a few pit stops along the way to fuel up and get ready for flight.
As we leave here today, we're going to go to a facility that'll fuel the spacecraft with the rocket fuels and propellants it needs. We'll put a launch abort system on. We'll send it out to be stacked in the rocket and launched.
Orion's journey to the moon began on the Bayou. NASA's Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans is where technicians with Lockheed Martin began welding the pieces of the spacecraft's underlying aluminum structure together. 1 year later, it arrived in Florida, taking up semi-permanent residence inside the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Engineers and technicians will spend the next years working almost around the clock, outfitting Orion with thousands of components and pushing the capsule through several rounds of rigorous testing as teams prepare for its flight around the moon. The first step, though, is the crew module's arrival.
When it gets here, we put it into a fixture called the bird cage tool, and we use that fixture to position and attach all of the mechanically attached primary and secondary structure for the crew module.
Part of that includes the heat shield, which protects the crew module as it blazes through Earth's atmosphere at astonishing speed as it returns home. Technicians with Lockheed bond those thermal protection system products onto the heat shield right here in the ONC. And they do the same for the crew module's forward bay cover.
This covers the forward bay of the crew module such that once we come back into the atmosphere, this gets jettisoned and all of the landing system, i.e. parachutes, get deployed and slow the crew module down so that when it touches down in the ocean, it's only going a few miles an hour.
With the primary and secondary structures all attached, the crew module is tested to see how everything holds up. Orion is pressurized, stressing the welds to ensure they'll hold up under the proper loading. Afterwards, non-destructive evaluation of those welds is conducted to check for any voids or cracks. Once the structure is deemed strong enough, the crew module is moved just a few spaces down into the ONC's clean room for its next round of integrations. The crew module is on the move again to the crew module integration station. There, all of the electrical systems, including wire harnesses and avionics boxes, that control the crew module's guidance, navigation, communications, and its power subsystems are integrated. The crew module isn't the only thing that makes up the Orion spacecraft. Teams also worked closely with the European Space Agency to build the service module, the element that will power Orion on its journey around the moon.
And when we have a full service module and a full crew module, then we stack the two together and we have what's called the crew service module for Artemis 1.
Under the Artemis program, NASA plans to not only return to the moon, but to use that as a stepping stone to go farther than any human has ever gone before, Mars. To get there, it's truly a cross-country and international effort among thousands of individuals.
You know, it really is a testament to the workforce. If you think about what we've been through over the years that they've been putting this together, and particularly think about the environment that this team was dealing with. We're dealing with COVID, and we're asking these folks to come into work every day and finish the spacecraft so we can keep this mission going. And we're excited.
And really, this is only the start of Orion's path to the pad.
It's a little hard to put into words when you think about the fact that we are in the first flow of what will be our nation's deep space exploration program. It hits you in the heart, and it really speaks to why we all are doing what we're doing.
I never thought as a little kid growing up I'd be part of something like this today. Now as a dad of two young girls, to be able to tell them what I do and to be able to have them someday watch the first woman stand on the moon is pretty amazing to me personally.
NASA is preparing for a journey back to the moon. To get there, we need tons of rocket power coming from our Space Launch System. It all started in Promontory, Utah, where Northrop Grumman manufactured each of the segments that make up the rocket's boosters. After a 10-day cross-country journey, the booster segments were delivered to Kennedy Space Center's Rotation, Processing, and Surge Facility, or RPSF. If this all sounds familiar, that's because it's the same facility that was used to process shuttle booster segments, which all came from Utah. Then they're ready to go to the iconic Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, where the rest of the motor segments are assembled and stacked on top of the mobile launcher.
This vehicle, of course, it's produced all across the country. Components all come here. They may be built around the country, but they all come together right here in the Vehicle Assembly Building.
Our SLS rocket will generate 8.8 million pounds of thrust to break through Earth's gravitational pull. That's more power than the Space Shuttle and the Saturn V rocket used. Teams with NASA's Exploration Ground Systems are responsible for assembling the boosters that will house the majority of that power. The twin solid rocket boosters, made up of 10 total motor segments, will stand nearly 17 stories when fully stacked. First, teams will inspect and prep the hardware. Next, they're ready to start stacking the segments, a process that takes time, patience, and a steady hand.
Once we have everything done in High Bay 4, we pick up the segment with the 325 crane, pick it up over the 16th floor crossover to where you see it now, and we begin stacking the segments. Each segment, we lift over the 16th floor crossover and stack it. Once we stack it, we put it on top of the segment below, and we put about 177 pins all the way around the whole thing to attach each segment.
And the pressure to perform the operation flawlessly can test the team's nerves.
There's a tremendous responsibility involved with processing flight hardware like this. It's nerve-wracking at times, but it's exciting. There's zero appetite for risk in a program like this.
With all 10 booster segments now fully stacked on the mobile launcher, there's just one final piece of the puzzle to round out the power needed to get SLS off the ground and send it to space. Core stage. After a 900-mile journey aboard NASA's Pegasus barge, the SLS core stage, the largest rocket stage NASA has ever built, has made it to Kennedy Space Center. Standing an impressive 212 feet tall and weighing a whopping 188,000 pounds, the core stage came all the way from Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. The core stage went through round after round of rigorous testing, including what's called its Green Run series. The successful final test resulted in some big emotions from the team. With over 700,000 gallons of propellant flowing through the core stage, its RS-25 engines firing for 8 minutes straight, the series involved 8 rounds that looked at systems individually before culminating in pure power. Following its arrival at Kennedy, teams moved the core stage into the VAB, where it was lifted by a crane and placed in between the twin solid rocket boosters.
Essentially, we have these 2 massive cranes that are located inside of the VAB, where we go ahead and we pick 2 points at the end of the core stage, one on the back portion of it and on the front portion of it. We lift it up to the point where we're able to transition it from a horizontal position over into a vertical position, and then essentially bring it way up to the top of the vehicle assembly building and cross it over into High Bay 3.
NASA's largest rocket stage, now fully integrated with the twin boosters, is ready to get Orion off the Earth. But it will take one more critical component to give the capsule that extra push it needs to journey tens of thousands of miles beyond the moon. With just a single RL-10 engine, the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, or ICPS, will provide over 20,000 pounds of thrust to send Orion on the ride of a lifetime. To connect the ICPS with the rocket stack, teams next added the launch vehicle stage adapter to the core stage, followed by the ICPS. But before the spacecraft can be attached to the rocket, teams will conduct a series of tests to ensure all of SLS's components communicate properly with one another, plus the ground systems equipment, the launch control systems, and its software. Adding to the challenge, those methods for testing have changed significantly since the days of the Apollo program. Initially built in the 1960s to house assembly of the Saturn V, the VAB has undergone some major modifications to support several different kinds of rockets and spacecraft, whether they're going into low Earth orbit or venturing to deep space. At this point, the stack is nearly complete. All that's missing is the spacecraft itself. With fueling of Orion's crew and service modules complete, the spacecraft moves from the MPPF into the Launch Abort System facility. In July 2019, teams completed a critical test, the Ascent Abort 2 flight test, to validate the Launch Abort System works as expected. After reaching an altitude of about 6 miles, where the test spacecraft experienced high-stress conditions expected during launch, the abort sequence triggered. Within milliseconds, the abort motor fired to pull the crew module away to safety. Its attitude control motor flipped the capsule into the proper orientation, and the jettison motor fired to release the crew module for a splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean. Fully integrated with its launch abort system, the Orion spacecraft slowly makes its way to the VAB in the overnight hours. Upon its arrival, teams carefully lift and lower it onto the Orion stage adapter. With this operation, stacking is complete.
As soon as we roll out of the vehicle assembly building, High Bay 3, and the world gets a chance to see this rocket, I think it is going to be shocking.
Every single vehicle that has carried humans beyond the bounds of low Earth orbit has undergone integration and testing in that vehicle assembly building. The Space Launch System, mated with the Orion spacecraft, will continue this proud tradition.
NASA took a giant step toward returning humanity to the moon. The fully assembled Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft for the Artemis 1 mission made its debut outside the massive vehicle assembly building.
We've seen the mobile launcher outside, and it's massive, but now add an over 300-foot rocket on top of it, it's just going to be amazing.
Charlie Blackwell Thompson oversees the launch countdown, ultimately providing the go for launch.
Entity, launch director, representing this team and all the men and women that have worked to make this day happen, I proudly give you a go to roll the Artemis launch vehicle to the pad.
Once outside, the rocket began its nearly 4-mile journey to the pad, riding atop a 6.6 million-pound crawler transporter, which was originally constructed to transport the Apollo moon rocket. Now NASA's new moon rocket is making the same journey the Saturn V took 50 years ago.
It is amazing to see the culmination of all of this work of many years, to have a chance to then now see their work going over to the pad and then launching to go to the moon.
The rocket is rolling to historic Launch Complex 39B, its launch pad used for both Apollo and shuttle launches, sending hundreds of astronauts to space throughout the decades, and now on tap to send hundreds more as we return to the moon and venture beyond to Mars. But for this mission, there will be no astronauts on board. Before the uncrewed Artemis 1 stack can launch to our nearest celestial body, it has to travel to the pad for a wet dress rehearsal.
Wet dress rehearsal is essentially launch without a launch. So wet dress is really our opportunity to find any issues or adjustments that we need to make in our launch countdown.
For Artemis 1, the wet dress rehearsal is the final and most critical test before the rocket can return to the launch pad for liftoff to the moon. During the countdown, over 730,000 gallons of supercooled liquid propellants will be loaded into the rocket as part of the nearly 2-day launch countdown.
Wet dress is the biggest milestone we have aside from launch, because that means that the rocket is now put together and then it tells us the rocket is ready to go for launch.
Behind that wet dress rehearsal is a launch team made up of hundreds of engineers monitoring each system of the 320-foot-tall Artemis 1 rocket and capsule. Sitting in firing room 1 is the core launch control team, monitoring hundreds of launch commit criteria to ensure the ground systems and flight hardware are ready for launch.
Now you would think that launch control team in Firing Room 1 is it, that's all you need. We have an expansive support team across really the entire NASA enterprise that is supporting us on launch day.
And that support spans the entire nation, from additional systems engineers sitting in Kennedy's Firing Room 2, to the flight control team at Johnson Space Center in Houston, to the contractors responsible for designing and building each segment of the rocket and capsule.
this team is really shaping up to be a great, very skilled and ready to operate and execute launch for Artemis 1.
With the Artemis 1 launch team now fully certified and the wet dress rehearsal complete, SLS and Orion are ready for their final pit stop, returning to the VAB before venturing back to Launch Pad 39B for liftoff. The countdown to T-0 starts approximately 2 days before launch. Teams inside the Launch Control Center have been working around the clock, powering up each section of the rocket and configuring the launch pad to support the 8.8 million pounds of thrust our moon rocket will generate at liftoff.
As our 0 hour approaches for the Artemis generation, we do have a heightened sense of anticipation. We've noticed just the overall mood and focus within the team is definitely a positive one.
Over the past few years, teams have put in thousands of hours, performing simulations and rehearsals to ensure that they are ready for this moment. Today, we make history. With the launch of the most powerful rocket the world has ever seen, we are taking the first step in humanity's return to the moon.
I can tell you there's an energy and there's an excitement around the Kennedy Space Center, I would say, across the agency and all around the Space Coast as we get closer and closer to this launch.
This mission will validate that the rocket and capsule do perform as expected before future Artemis missions send astronauts to the lunar surface.
We have worked really hard to get here. The team has done an absolutely outstanding job. We're up to the challenge, and I'm really looking forward to a successful test flight.
You are looking at the world's most powerful rocket and Orion spacecraft live on Launch Pad 39B. Artemis 1 embodies the hard work of thousands across the world, determined to explore for the benefit of all. Welcome, and thank you for joining us live at Kennedy Space Center, where the energy here is palpable as we attempt to make history today. I'm Megan Cruz, and this is NASA astronaut Kayla Barron. Kayla, great to have you here again.
It's so awesome to be here tonight. When I first walked up and saw the view from the desk here, I was just blown away.
Now, with all systems configured correctly, the launch director gives the final go for liftoff.
On behalf of all the men and women across our great nation who have worked to bring this hardware together to make this day possible,
and for the Artemis generation, this is for you. At this time, I give you a go to resume count and launch Artemis 1.
This mission goes with a lot of hopes and dreams of a lot of people. It's no longer the Apollo generation. It's the Artemis generation. And that brings new discoveries, a whole new world of discoveries.
T-minus 50 seconds and counting. The Space Launch System is now counting down to liftoff of Orion on its maiden voyage to the moon. And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiated. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where we just watched Artemis 1 launch, our first step towards our next adventure into deep space.
It was incredible. It took my breath away and I was tearing up. What an amazing accomplishment for this team.
So you guys know I have talked a lot about appreciating the moment that you're in. And we have worked hard as a team. You guys have worked hard as a team for this moment. This is your moment.
With Orion off the ground, Mission Control in Houston takes the reins. The successful launch of SLS is just the beginning. Orion will spend the next several weeks journeying around the moon, sending flight data back to teams here on Earth for real-time analysis. During its mission, Orion reached speeds traveling about 30 times as fast as the speed of sound.
This dramatic video of the Earth-Moon transit that took place showed and punctuated the fact that we were pressing away from our home planet to a distance of some 268,000 miles away from Earth, further than any human-rated spacecraft had ever traveled. For a spacecraft designed to return humans to Earth, eclipsing the mark set by the Apollo 13 vehicle back in 1970.
After several weeks of flight, it was time for Orion to return home.
A half-century later, NASA's newest moon explorer, the Orion spacecraft, is barreling its way back home after circumnavigating the moon and beyond in an elliptical distant retrograde orbit. Now less than 2 hours away from splashing down in the Pacific Ocean west of Baja California to complete its shakedown mission.
Like the Apollo missions of the past, Orion will have to endure incredibly high temperatures during re-entry of Earth's atmosphere.
A journey that began with the power of the launch of the Space Launch System 25.5 days ago, about to reach its final minutes in the searing heat of re-entry, where temperatures around Orion will build up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
While re-entering Earth's atmosphere, the spacecraft slowed to about 300 miles per hour. As it continued its descent, Orion's parachute system, containing 11 total parachutes, deployed once it reached approximately 9,000 feet and a speed of about 130 miles per hour.
And there it is, high over the Pacific, America's new ticket to ride to the moon and beyond now in view. Orion under its chutes descending towards splashdown.
These parachutes help slow the crew module to a much more manageable speed, roughly 20 miles per hour, for a water landing off the coast of California.
Splashdown. From Tranquility Base to Taurus Littrow to the tranquil waters of the Pacific, the latest chapter of NASA's journey to the moon comes to a close. Orion, back on Earth.
When Orion was deemed safe to approach, team members jumped into the water and attached hardware that steadied the capsule.
What we do at NASA really is all about collaborations, and the collaborations that we've had with the Department of Defense in particular over the past years, their hard work and their dedication as they went through a great deal of planning, hardware development and processes, and a lot of practicing to get to this point.
And that team made of a combination of NASA and Department of Defense personnel, has put in years of work to make sure that they were ready.
It's just been a long time coming. We've been working this mission for a while, and we've done a ton of training. And every time you do training with a mock-up capsule, you don't have any of that. You don't have parachutes. You don't, hear it coming back through the atmosphere, the sonic booms and all of that kind of stuff. And today that actually happened. It's just amazing.
This mission, this spacecraft and this team exceeded all expectations. For the last 25.5 days, we've been every day looking ahead to the next flight to see how we can improve on where we are today so that we can fly a safe and successful mission with our astronauts next time around.
Once stabilized, the team secured the spacecraft with hardware and rope assemblies and towed it to the Navy ship. The dive team then connected Orion to a series of ropes from inside the back of the ship, known as the well deck, to safely and securely pull the capsule inside. With Orion safely secured inside the ship, teams made their way to Naval Base San Diego, where the capsule was offloaded and prepped for its cross-country trip back to its home base, Kennedy Space Center.
This is really the start of a campaign of several missions to get humans back to the moon and beyond to Mars. So there's still a lot to be done, and this is just the beginning.
Kennedy just stunned everybody with the Apollo generation.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out,
and said that we were going to achieve what we thought was impossible.
Of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
Many things have happened since, but we knew we were going back. This is the program of going back to the moon to learn, to live, to invent, to create in order to explore beyond. So it's a new day. A new day has dawned. An Artemis generation is taking us there.